Welcome, beautiful soul. I'm grateful you're here, because only kind hearts pause to hear stories like this. Tonight, I'll share the story of Amara Johnson, a Black woman whose quiet focus was mistaken for agreement. Some folks thought her silence meant she would fold, that she would let the system decide who gets to win and who gets written off. They misread her calm for obedience and forgot a simple truth. A Black woman's silence is not surrender, it's strategy. When she finally spoke, the room learned what integrity sounds like. This is how she turned pain into power, protected her students, and refused to let a lie sit in the front row. This is Black women's soul, she said enough. A Black woman chose truth. Evelyn High Institute looked tired that night, the kind of tired that sits on the bricks and waits for morning to save it. The building was mostly dark, but her classroom held a small circle of warm light. The desk was clean, the way she kept it. Pens in a jar, graded essays stacked by color. A lavender sanitizer bottle that always made the students laugh. On the back wall, student art lived next to hand-cut quotes. Quotes her students actually read. In the window glass, she could see herself while she worked. A calm Black woman with heavy, curly, shoulder-length hair. Loose around her face, full and soft. The coils opening at the ends, like they were exhaling. Her skin a medium dark brown. The kind camera lenses love when the lighting is honest. Tonight, her blouse was a deep navy. Sleeves pushed up, small gold studs in her ears. Nothing flashy, everything steady. The manila folder on the desk sat like a dare. Amara had carried it all afternoon. Through last period. Through a hallway conversation that didn't need witnesses. Through the low hum of the copier that used to shake the counter before they fixed it with tape. She hadn't opened it, because a part of her already knew what would be inside. Teachers develop a sixth sense. You grade papers long enough, track effort long enough. You hear the math in the way a student argues a point, and you can tell who has grown and who hasn't. Numbers usually tell the same story your gut tells. When numbers stop telling the truth, the room gets cold. Amara had not always been this steady, this sure. Strength like hers doesn't arrive fully formed, it's raised. Some of it came from a childhood spent in a small apartment, where her mother's tired work shoes always landed by the door. At the end of a long day, her mother, Alana Johnson, was a middle school teacher who didn't just teach history, she defended futures. She stood in front of her students even when the administration behind her wobbled. Amara remembered watching her mother grade papers at the kitchen table, while telling stories of students who just needed someone to refuse to give up on them. There were nights when Alana came home exhausted, hands aching, voice hoarse from fighting for students other people ignored. But she still looked at young Amara and said, "Courage doesn't clock out." Those words stuck like fingerprints on a heart. Amara didn't fully understand them then, but she loved how her mother made truth sound like something worth pushing for. When Amara was 13, her mother fought for a student the school tried to label too difficult. Alana walked into that office like justice in sensible heels. The boy stayed. He later wrote a poem about hope, a poem that made the whole cafeteria clap. Amara watched and decided, I want to be that person for someone else. She went to college with that mission, beating in her ribcage like a promise. English education major, scholarships and part-time shifts. She taped poems from strong Black writers to her dorm wall. Baldwin, Angelou, Giovanni, so their courage could borrow space in her lungs. Then she met Marcus, not loud, not trying to impress her, just steady. He listened. He believed in her calling before she even explained the details. When she told him she wanted to teach, he didn't ask why she chose a job that paid in pride instead of ease. He simply said, "Students need what you got." They married young, small ceremony, big loyalty. Not dramatic love, durable love. Her first years teaching were fire and learning. Students arrived carrying worlds inside backpacks: grief, brilliance, hunger, potential. She learned to celebrate every inch of growth. She learned systems can be cruel to Black children. And she learned silence helps the wrong side win. On her mother's retirement day, Alana hugged her and whispered in her ear, "Don't let them change what makes you good." It wasn't just advice. It was inheritance. So tonight, when Amara opened that folder, she wasn't only a teacher checking scores. She was a daughter protecting a legacy. She saw every child who ever trusted her more than a test. And she felt those words rise again like heat under bone. Courage doesn't clock out. She opened the folder and scanned down the first page. There it was. Nia Carter fail. Her stomach dipped. She closed her eyes once, then looked again, because she refused to be dramatic about facts. The letters didn't change. Fail. She flipped to the rubric sheet, where she kept quick performance notes. Nia's essays had climbed from solid to strong. Her short response writing got tighter. Her test corrections showed actual thinking, not copying. The girl stayed after school on days she should have gone home to rest. She read on the bus. She read while waiting in the lunch line. She even read when the cafeteria got too loud, and the security guard kept telling everyone to take it down a notch. Failing did not live in any of that. Amara turned the page, and her eyes found another name that made no sense. A student who had skimmed the semester with late work and thin answers was suddenly top 5. She kept flipping. Another jump. Another miracle that had never happened in class. Patterns tell on people. And this one was loud. Her hands went still, then flat on the table. She listened to the building settle, the way you do when you're sorting your next move. In the hallway, a cart rolled past, one while arguing with the tile. Somewhere near the office, a copy machine groaned. Everything carried on, while the future inside that folder bent the wrong direction.
I'm not here to dress a lie in a nice font and pass it to parents like a report. I am not here to let a number rob a student who did the work, while another gets lifted for a last name. These students walk in with the world already weighing them down, and school is supposed to help them stand, not push them lower. If somebody thought I would keep my head down and call this excellence, they picked the wrong Black woman. My room is where truth pays rent.
She set the folder down and looked at the window again. The reflection showed the same woman she always was, only steadier. Heavy curls rested at her shoulders, not pulled back tonight, soft and present. A frame that made her face look even more certain. She thought of her grandmother, the way she used to say, "You can lift a house if someone you love is stuck under it." Most days, teaching felt exactly like that. Both ordinary and holy. You move small pieces and save big lives. The corridor outside her door had thinned to that special kind of quiet only a school knows after sunset. The lockers had stopped humming. The announcements board glowed alone. She gathered her bag, switched off the lamp, and locked the classroom. A folded strip of paper slid out from the top of the door frame and fell at her shoe. She picked it up without hurry. For words in thick black marker. Stop asking questions. Then smaller, underneath it. For your own good. The handwriting had the confidence of someone who thought their message would land. She read it twice, mostly to give herself a second to choose the right response. Then she smiled, without showing teeth. Warnings like that only work on people who will fear a favor. She did not. The November air outside was cool, without being mean. In the parking lot, sodium lights threw long pale fingers across the asphalt, giving everything that soft orange cast that makes a car look older. Amara walked to her Camry bag on one shoulder, keys threaded between her fingers, the way every woman learns to do, without ever needing a class on it. She did a slow scan across the lot, nothing dramatic, just habit, turning into safety. The neighborhood was fine most nights. Tonight felt like any other night, which is to say complicated but survivable. At home, the quiet took off its shoes. She passed the hall shelf where she kept a small blue dish for keys and a little white candle for hard days. The studio apartment held plants that leaned toward the window, like they were all in agreement about sunlight. On the desk by the window sat her journal, a simple-lined book that had seen worse storms than this. She lit the candle, set the folder beside it, and opened to a fresh page. The first sentences matter. They aim the rest.
They want me to pretend this is fine, to pass a lie like it's homework due by Friday. They want me to fear a list, a meeting, a memo, a sideways look from a man who learned to smile without meaning it. Fear never protected a single student I have taught. Fear never got a student into college, never turned a C into a true A, never put dignity back in a student's chest after the world took it. So I will tell the truth, and I will live with what the truth demands.
She wrote for a while. Not a rant, just clean thoughts. A good teacher knows the difference between noise and evidence. She listed the mismatches she could prove, and the ones she would prove once she had the right access. She wrote down the names of students whose work she could pull at any moment. The drafts, the scored rubrics, the documented growth. She added notes about the student who had jumped tears, without the work to make it honest. Then she wrote out a simple plan. Nothing flashy, just steps that would hold if someone tried to blow on them. She reminded herself to be direct, not loud, because loudness lets people call you emotional and skip your logic. She did not plan to give anyone that easy exit. She closed the journal, exhaled, then opened the folder again, because she could not leave it alone. The weight of that paper was not paper. It was a semester of effort, converted to a number that could open or shut a door on a student's life. Nia's name pulled her back. That girl did not have the kind of family that could make calls and unbend a grade. She had a mother who worked a double, and a little brother who still needed help with fractions. She had thick notebooks, a second-hand coat that still looked good, and a future that wanted to be taken seriously. Amara tasted anger again. The sharp kind that comes when someone insults work, not just pride. The phone buzzed on the table. A text from a number she recognized but had not saved by name. One of her seniors, probably asking if grades were posted. She let it sit. She would not lie, and she would not text anything she could not stand in later. Her reply was simple. Give me till tomorrow. Then she stood, blew out the candle, and looked at the city through the window. Tail lights ran like slow rubies down the street. Someone on the block laughed from a balcony. Life kept being life, while this decision kept becoming more obvious. The next morning, Evelyn High Institute looked like itself. A little rough around the edges, a little too proud of the banners out front, and a lot dependent on the people who kept it standing. First period slid by the way first period always does, when a school is awake, but not fully alive yet. She taught close reading with the same calm focus she always brought, marking places where a sentence did more than it looked like, asking her students to prove their claims, not vibe their way through class. She didn't let her worry leak. She didn't shortchange anyone because her mind was somewhere else. Teaching is a promise. You show up for the student in front of you. By lunch, the lounge carried its usual mix of exhaustion and humor. Mr. Lewis read a newspaper he pretended not to care about, yet folded carefully. A math teacher reheated soup that made the microwave smell like garlic all day. Someone joked about the vending machine stealing $1. Someone else said the machine needed a union rep. Amara poured coffee she didn't need and sat at the end of the table. The folder was in her bag. It felt alive, like it was breathing beside her, waiting to be opened again. She didn't stand up, didn't make a speech. She watched. In rooms like this, one reckless sentence can build a case against you, and she knew better. Still, Mr. Lewis glanced her way, the kind of look people give when they can tell you know something. He cleared his throat. Old, gentle. Long night, he asked. Not nosy, just human. She gave a small nod. Nothing more. He returned it. The kind of nod that says he's seen 36 long nights. And knows their weight. 5th period. Nia stepped into the doorway before the bell, hovering the way students do when they want to ask something private, without making it a thing. Amara met her eyes, gave a look that said, I see you. Hold tight. Not here. The girl understood. That's what trust looks like in a school. The bell rang. The room filled. For the next 40 minutes, they talked about argument structure, about how to move a reader with reasons, not volume. Nia took notes like she was building a bridge. Jamal sat near the window, light catching his face just enough to make him blink. And he argued a point with more evidence than he used to bring. Growth never lies. After the last bell, the building shifted into its other self, less crowded, more echo. Amara printed a small stack of student work from her gradebook, just the sample she would need. She signed out the laptop cart, because the carts always made someone in the office ask where it went, which documented something useful for later. Then she walked down the hall toward the front office, where the principal's door sat too glossy for a public school. She did not ask permission to care. She asked for time. The secretary told her he was in, and waved her in with a practiced smile that had survived decades of principals. Principal Harris stood to greet her with both hands, like he was opening a ceremony. He wore the kind of suit that says I like being in charge of rooms. His walls held plaques and photos with people who signed checks. He motioned to a chair and waited for her to sit. She stayed standing long enough to place the folder on his desk, then sat with her back straight, legs angled the way that makes you feel balanced. Ms. Johnson, he said, the voice he used in assemblies turned down to office level. What can I do for you today? He already knew. People like him, always do. She did not waste his time or hers. She named the problem with clean sentences. She outlined the mismatches between performance in class and scores in the file. She mentioned specific pieces of evidence, without oversharing. She kept it factual because facts make people reach for different tactics. He listened with a face that had learned how to look calm while filing you under, not a team player. When she finished, he folded his hands and smiled, the kind of smile that is not about joy. I appreciate your passion, he said. Truly. But we have to think about the bigger picture, Ms. Johnson. The school is being evaluated. The district is watching. We need our numbers to reflect growth, so we can protect programs that serve all students. He spoke like he was doing a kindness by explaining the weather. She let a beat pass, then answered with the kind of clarity that belongs to people who teach for a living and know how to make a point land. Growth is not a trophy you print, she said. It is the work a student does. The numbers should reflect the truth, not create it. His mouth tightened just a little. He leaned forward, elbows nearly touching the desk. Let me be clear, he said, voice low now, and the temperature dropped. We need team players. I cannot have a teacher undermining confidence in our results. If you keep pressing this, I cannot protect you from the consequences.
Consequences are not the same as truth. Protecting a lie is not leadership. It's performance. I am not here to be useful to your image. I am here to be honest with my students and with their families about the work they have done. If that costs me your approval, I can live without it.
She did not say it out loud. She said it with her posture, with the way her eyes didn't blink away from his, with the way she lifted the folder and slid a copy of her evidence back into her bag, like it belonged to her, not to the building. She stood, thanked him for his time, and left the office the same way she came in, steady, not rushing, not looking to see who had watched her go in. On the way back to her room, the hall felt longer, but the air felt cleaner. At home that night, she did not need the candle to tell her what came next. She already knew. She organized her plan by morning blocks, set alarms for each step, so she wouldn't let emotion make her late, and laid out tomorrow's outfit the way you do for days that will test your balance. Navy slacks, cream blouse, hair down and full, because shrinking yourself does not make a lie more polite. She put her journal on the counter by her keys and left her pen on top of it, as if to tell herself, "We are finishing this sentence tomorrow." The next morning, Everland High Institute was already buzzing by the time Amara walked in. Not the good kind of buzzing, not excitement, the other kind. The kind that comes when people sense a storm forming and choose to talk about the weather instead. Students rushed through the halls with backpacks half open, earbuds half in. Teachers carried stacks of ungraded papers like shields. The intercom crackled twice, then gave up, like even it didn't want to be involved. Amara headed toward her classroom, chin lifted, steps even. Her curls framed her face just right today. Not because she tried, because life gave her that one small gift, on a day it knew she would need to look unbothered. Inside her room, she set her bag down, started writing the day's focus on the board. She didn't have to turn around to know someone was watching her. Years of teaching had trained her ears to feel silence when it had eyes inside it. When she finally turned, Principal Harris stood in the doorway, that smooth, corporate smile glued to his face, like it came standard with the job. He didn't step inside. He didn't greet her the way people greet each other. He just stood there long enough to be seen, nodded once, and walked away. He wanted her to feel eyes on her. She did. But what she felt wasn't fear. It was clarity. First period moved fine. Students were students, sleepy, sarcastic, unpredictable brilliance wrapped in teenage armor. Second period, one of the newer teachers slipped a note onto Amara's desk while the class took a quiz. He didn't look at her. He just walked out. She opened the folded paper. 3 words stared up at her. "He knows everything." Amara folded it neatly, tucked it under her attendance sheet. No reaction. No flinch. She refused to give fear a chair in her room. These walls were for courage. By lunch, the tension in the building had its own temperature. Conversations dropped when she entered the lounge. A couple of teachers looked up with empathy, but looked away faster, like caring out loud might get them in trouble. Mr. Lewis approached her slowly, mug in hand. "I heard you talk to him," Mr. Lewis murmured, voice low, eyes fixed on his coffee. Amara didn't blink. "I told him the truth." He nodded once, like a man who's survived by nodding. "Be smart," he said quietly. Then he walked away, before his heart made him say more. That afternoon, while her class worked in small groups, Amara reviewed portfolios, clean proof of growth. She documented everything. Dates, progress patterns, hard work that deserved to be written in permanent ink. Nia passed her desk and paused, hesitating, like she was deciding whether courage was worth it. "Can I ask you something?" she whispered, voice tight. Without looking up, Amara answered softly, "You can always ask me." What happens if the system is wrong?" Nia asked. "Do we still keep trying?" Amara finally looked at her. The girl's face held everything at once. Young, hopeful, tired and brave.
Keep trying, because your future deserves your effort. Even when the system is late, to recognize your worth. Your work is real. Whether they honor it or not, the truth always shows up. Maybe not on time, but always on purpose. Don't let anyone decide you're small, just because they're scared of you growing.
Nia's eyes glistened in a way she tried to hide. Then she nodded and returned to her table. She sat straighter, she wrote harder. When the final bell rang, students spilled into the hallway, like a shaken bottle of soda. Backpacks bumped, laughter bounced, lockers slammed. Amara stepped into the corridor and felt the shift, people clearing space around her, like she was dangerous. Maybe she was. Halfway down the hallway, a voice called after her. "Ms. Johnson." She turned. Principal Harris again. This time no smile. No audience. He leaned in, just enough so only she could hear.
You are making this harder than it needs to be. Our success keeps this school alive. Your concerns are becoming a distraction. Stand down and let the people in charge take care of it. Don't put yourself in a position you can't come back from.
He pulled back before she could respond, straightened his tie, and walked off, like he had delivered a package and expected a signature. Amara stood still in that hallway for a moment, not frozen, calculating. Then she walked toward her classroom, without a change in pace. Inside, she sat at her desk and let the silence settle. Not the scared kind of silence. The silence of a woman getting ready to make a move. She opened her journal and wrote calmly. The bigger the lie, the louder the truth needs to walk. By the time Amara locked her classroom door and stepped into the late afternoon hallway, the building felt different. The posters looked like they were watching. The floors creaked louder under her steps, like they wanted someone to notice what they had been holding up. She tucked the folder tighter under her arm, not because she was nervous, but because she understood now that this wasn't just paperwork. This was proof. She reached the front entrance and pushed the door open, ready to breathe outside air and leave this cold truth behind for one night. But a voice stopped her before she made it down the steps. "Ms. Johnson, please wait." It was Jamal. Tall, strong-shouldered Jamal. The boy who pretended he was too cool to care, but never missed turning in his assignments because he wanted to make his mom proud. He jogged down the hallway toward her, breath shaky, holding a crumpled paper in one hand and the strap of his backpack in the other. When he stood in front of her, his jaw was tight, the kind of tight that holds back something heavy. He handed her the paper. Fail. His hands trembled once, then stopped, like he was trying to freeze all the feelings inside. He looked down, so the world wouldn't see him breaking. But Amara saw it anyway. She motioned him inside her classroom. They sat at two desks facing each other, like two people trying to keep the truth contained between them. Jamal took a deep breath, but when he spoke, his voice cracked anyway.
"I don't get it, Ms. Johnson. I stayed up studying while my mom worked the late shift. I said no to friends every weekend because I wanted this grade. Now they're saying I failed, like I didn't try at all." His breath hitched, anger tangled with hurt. "Why should I keep fighting if nobody cares whether I win or not?"
His fists curled, knuckles whitening as he gripped his backpack. One tear slipped out, not the small kind, the angry kind that stings on the way down. Amara listened. She didn't interrupt. She let his courage finish speaking. When he finally looked up, waiting for an answer that didn't exist on paper, Amara breathed once, slow and steady, and chose her words like she was building a foundation under his feet.
You did everything right. This paper is the lie, not you. Don't let them trick you into thinking your effort was wasted. Hard work builds a future. Even when the present looks unfair, you are worth every ounce of your fight. Remember that. When the world forgets.
Jamal blinked slowly, letting her voice push back the hurt that had just tried to settle into his bones. He nodded once, the kind of nod that doesn't fix anything, but keeps the door from closing. "Thank you," he murmured, and he left before his strength ran out. When the door clicked shut behind him, Amara sat there alone for a moment. Not because she didn't know what to do next, but because she needed to feel the weight of what standing up meant. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. 3 words flashed on the screen. "We warned you."
They wanted me to be quiet. They should have left my students out of it. I can carry my own struggles, but I will burn any bridge that tries to crush these students' futures. Some fights are chosen for you. This one just chose the wrong woman to intimidate.
She closed the journal and tapped its cover once, sealing her promise in ink. Outside, the sky had darkened into that deep blue that belongs to people who are still awake because purpose won't let them sleep early. Amara drove home with one hand steady on the wheel, radio off, thoughts loud. Halfway home, she slowed at a traffic light. A group of teens crossed the street, laughing carefree. Her chest tightened. Students deserved that. Rest. Joy. A world that didn't write their limitations in red pen before they even had a chance to prove the opposite. Her phone buzzed again in the passenger seat. This time a picture. Her classroom. Door slightly open. Light on. Sent from a blocked number. Amara looked up from the phone and stared straight ahead. Her eyes sharpened like a blade finding its shape. This wasn't just grade manipulation anymore. Someone was trying to break her spirit. And they were about to learn her spirit doesn't break. It multiplies. The next morning started with the kind of quiet that does not feel like peace. Amara parked, sat for a second with both hands on the wheel, then stepped out with her shoulder bag and a plan. The picture from last night sat in her phone, her classroom door slightly open, light on. She had locked it before leaving. She knew her routines. She trusted her memory. If someone wanted to make her feel watched, that feeling would not be allowed to set the rules. Inside, she checked the door first, then the desk drawers. Nothing missing, a few things slightly off. A sticky note stack shifted to the right, a paper clip bent the wrong way. Petty moves, not real damage. The kind of tricks people use when they do not have the courage to put their name on the act. She took photos. Time-stamped, angles clean, details clear. Documentation was not just a habit anymore. It was armor. Before first period, she walked to the copy room and printed a short packet that would never be posted online. It contained anonymized writing samples from 3 students, dated and scored. She added the official grade sheet as a cover page, then paper-clipped each packet. She slid one into her folder, one into a sealed envelope, and one into a small blue binder that would not leave her side until this was done. Teachers carry a lot. Sometimes it is more than papers. Mid-morning, the hallway seemed to lean toward her as she walked by. A few students gave her small waves, the quiet kind that students use when they are grateful and unsure of the rules. Nia nodded at her from the doorway of a science class, then returned to her seat with that fierce determination that grows in students who decide to keep going even when the scoreboard looks wrong. Jamal saw her from down the hall, lifted his chin once, then moved on before emotion complicated his day. These small signals mattered. They were the reason Amara kept moving. Just before lunch, the secretary called her to the front office. "He asked to see you," she said, and her eyes flickered in a warning that did not need words. Amara thanked her, then entered Principal Harris's office, steady and focused. The door clicked. The plaques stared down from their places on the wall. The conference table shone a little too bright. Harris gestured to a chair, then remained standing, like he wanted to mark the height difference. He spoke in a tone that wanted to sound patient, and landed somewhere closer to pressure. He mentioned the district, the donors, the upcoming audit, all the things people like to name when they need obedience. He said the word unity twice. He said optics once. He never said honesty. When he finished, he placed both hands on the back of a chair and looked at her, as if waiting for permission to win. Amara did not give him a speech. She placed her sealed envelope on the table, slid it toward him, and said that it contained evidence of incorrect scores, anonymized and dated, with attached performance samples that contradicted the official results. She said she would be sending copies to the department chair and to the district assessment coordinator by the end of day. She added that her concern was specific and documented, not personal, and that her priority was the integrity of student records. Her voice did not waver. Her posture did not bend. He stared at the envelope, then at her. The smile did not return. His jaw tightened. The room felt smaller. The air felt thinner. The temperature felt lower.
This is not a good road for you. You will make enemies who are better placed than you are. Careers do not survive this kind of stubbornness. I am trying to protect the school, and that includes protecting you from yourself. Do not force my hand.
She waited a full second after he finished, not to be dramatic, but to make sure her words would land exactly as intended. Then she stood, thanked him for his time, and left with her copy of the evidence. She did not slam the door. She did not hurry. She did not look back. Back in her room, she exhaled slow, then turned to the board and wrote the day's learning target like she always did. You do not let intimidation steal your routines. The students came in, sat down, opened notebooks, and tried, which is all any teacher can ask. During independent work time, Amara moved from desk to desk and offered quick feedback. A sentence here, a question there, a small nudge that said, I see your effort, and I expect your best. She refused to let the fight swallow the teaching. The classroom remained sacred. Halfway through the period, the intercom crackled and called her name. Ms. Johnson, please step into the hallway. She did, and the assistant principal stood there with a clipboard and a neutral expression. He said there would be a random observation after lunch. He said procedures would be followed. He said the timing was unfortunate, then glanced left and right as if he wished he had not been the messenger. Amara nodded, returned to class, and continued the lesson, refusing to let the students smell the politics that had just walked by. At lunch, she found a quiet corner in the lounge and wrote a short email to the department chair with her concerns. She attached the anonymized packet and copied the district assessment coordinator. Subject line clean. Body short and factual. Tone professional. She did not editorialize. She did not accuse. She anchored every sentence in evidence. Then she hit send, and felt a precise kind of relief that only comes when you do the responsible thing, even if it complicates your day. The random observation happened at 1:30. A clipboard appeared. A chair slid into the back of the room. The observer sat without expression. Amara taught as if the only audience that mattered was the one she had promised to serve. She modeled a paragraph, asked for textual proof, guided a reluctant student to his point without shaming him, and celebrated a clean argument when it appeared from a shy corner of the room. The lesson ended on time. Exit tickets collected. Class dismissed with decency and structure. She had done her job, then some. After school, the building fell quiet again. She printed a few more pages of evidence, then locked them in her blue binder. She texted Nia a simple message. Proud of your focus today. 3 heart emojis came back, a young person's prayer for things to be fair. She gathered her things and reached for the door handle. There was a second note, wedged into the frame where the first one had been. The handwriting was neater this time, as if the writer wanted to be taken seriously. Stand down by Friday, or you will regret it. Amara read it twice. She did not crumple it. She slid it into a clear sleeve, took a photo of the door with the note still in place, then removed it and added it to the binder as well. She should have felt fear crawling up her neck. Yet what she felt was focus. Fear is loud. Focus is effective. She stepped into the hallway and nearly collided with Maya Thompson, the substitute who covered for the social studies department once a week and who had been at Everlyn long enough to know the building like family. Maya had silver hair and a voice that could calm a stampede. She looked at Amara, then at the binder, then at the note sleeve that had not yet been tucked away. Busy week, Maya said softly, as if she were commenting on the weather. Yet her eyes told Amara she understood the forecast. Amara nodded once. She did not explain. She did not overshare. She did not add weight to a woman who had already carried enough in her lifetime. Maya touched her elbow for half a second, a gesture that felt like blessing and backup, then continued down the hall. In the parking lot, the light had that late afternoon gold that tries to make everything look kinder. Amara unlocked her car, set the binder on the passenger seat, and took a breath that filled her ribs. Her phone vibrated, a new email notification. She checked the screen. The district assessment coordinator had replied, short and formal, requesting a meeting the next morning at 9, with the department chair present. There it was, the next step clearly marked. Traffic moved slowly on the way home, brake lights blinking in a soft rhythm. She thought of the observation, of the envelope on Harris's desk, of the emails now sitting on record, of Jamal's face when he tried to hold back tears, of Nia's 3 hearts. She thought of the word regret in the hallway note, the way it tried to plant a seed. She decided regret would not be her harvest. She pulled into her building's lot and sat for a moment in the quiet car, then carried the binder upstairs like it was a fragile thing that deserved care. Inside, she set it on the table, poured water into a glass, and stood by the window for a minute. The city kept moving, people kept laughing, sirens sang far away, life refused to pause. She opened the binder, checked her copies, and added a fresh page at the back labeled threats and anomalies. Then she listed the notes found, the door photo, the late-night classroom image, and the text messages, all with dates and times. She printed the list, slid it into the sleeve, then closed the binder with a firm hand.
If you try to scare me, I get organized. If you try to isolate me, I find witnesses. If you try to bury the truth, I grow roots where you cannot reach. I was not hired to decorate a broken system. I was hired to teach students, and that includes teaching them what integrity looks like in practice. You can threaten my comfort. You cannot touch my purpose.
Evening settled soft, then darker. She boiled pasta, answered 2 parent emails about independent reading choices, graded 3 short responses that needed attention, and stacked tomorrow's handouts by the door. Her life was still her life. That simple fact gave her balance. Just before midnight, she set an alarm for 6 and placed the binder inside her tote bag. She slept fine, not because the risk had vanished, but because the decision had been made. At 8:30 the next morning, she walked into the district office with her tote on her shoulder and a clear head. The waiting area smelled like old carpet and new coffee. A receptionist handed her a visitor sticker, and the printer sighed in the background like it had already lived 1,000 small bureaucracies. The department chair arrived 3 minutes later, careful, kind, eyes telling her that support existed, even if politics complicated it. At 8:58, the assessment coordinator opened the conference room door and greeted them with a measured tone, the kind used by people who know every word might end up quoted. They sat. The coordinator asked Amara to summarize her concern. Amara did so, precise and calm, then passed the anonymized packets. The coordinator read, flipped pages, compared dates, circled 2 lines, scribbled a note. The chair asked 1 question, then another, both designed to clarify process rather than dismiss it. For a moment, the world felt sane. Procedure doing what procedure is supposed to do. Adults handling a problem with care. The coordinator nodded once, professional and firm. We will open a formal review, she said. I will need access to the raw score exports and audit logs. I will reach out to the testing vendor today. She paused, then added, please do not discuss this with colleagues while the review is active. It was a request and a warning, delivered in the same breath. Amara agreed. She would not gossip. She would not leak. She would protect the process, even while she pushed it forward. They stood, shook hands, and stepped into the hallway. The chair held the door and waited until the coordinator was out of earshot. You are not alone, she said quietly, then left quickly so the words would not be captured by anyone who could weaponize them. Amara walked back to her car with her spine straight, set the binder on the passenger seat again, and checked her phone. A new message waited, without a name attached. Last chance to stop. Assembly tomorrow. She read it once. The school assembly had been announced earlier in the week. A midterm event that celebrated achievements and posted numbers. It was the kind of stage that made polished speeches look like progress. Whoever sent the message expected that stage to silence her. She looked through the windshield at the morning, then at the binder, then back at the message. Her reflection in the glass looked the same as it did yesterday, only more decided. She set the phone face down without replying, started the car, and pulled onto the street. The road ahead looked ordinary. The choice inside it did not. Tomorrow would be the assembly. Tomorrow would be the truth. The morning light came in clean, bright, and indifferent. It did not care that a school was about to decide what it believed. Amara woke before her alarm, stared at the ceiling for a breath, then swung her legs over the side of the bed and let her feet find the cool floor. Today would not ask for drama. Today would ask for steadiness. She moved through her routine like muscle memory had taken the wheel. Shower, moisturizer, a quick pass of leave-in to let the curls sit right, then palms smoothing the heavy coils down just enough to frame her face without taming them into apology. Clothes next. Navy slacks, cream blouse, a tailored cardigan she saved for days that needed calm authority, small gold studs, no necklace, nothing that would jingle into the microphone if things became public. This was not superstition. This was experience. The binder sat on the table where she had left it last night, spine up, pages squared, sleeves labeled. She slipped it into her tote, checked the journal and 2 pens, then added a flat bottle of water because people forget that truth dries your throat faster than lies. Phone. Keys. Deep breath that touched the bottom of her lungs. She locked the door behind her and stepped into a hallway that smelled like someone else's coffee, and the cleaner the landlord used when he felt generous. Traffic did its usual choreography. A delivery truck blocked a lane. A school bus made an unhurried right. A man in a suit checked his hair in the rear view like it owed him loyalty. Amara took her place in the morning's rhythm. She did not rehearse a speech. She had already written what needed to be written, and sent what needed to be sent. If words came, they would come from the same place that made her show up when she was tired and teach a room into paying attention. Evelyn High Institute had dressed itself for the assembly. Custodians had buffed the floor until the gym reflected light like a quiet lake. Banners hung straight, colors bright. The sound system was stacked and taped as if it belonged to a concert instead of a public school. Folding chairs ran in clean rows, each one waiting to hold a parent with questions, a teacher with a poker face, a student with a heartbeat that deserved better than politics. On the stage, a podium wore the school seal like a badge someone had shined too hard. Amara checked her classroom first. Habit. Door locked. Lights off. Everything where she left it. She set her tote on the desk, opened the binder, confirmed the order again even though she didn't have to, then closed it and traced a finger down the spine the way people do when they are anchoring themselves. She wrote the date on the board because it felt wrong to skip the simple rituals. Then she turned off the lights and headed toward the gym with the tote on her shoulder and her pace steady. In the hallway, a few students fell into step behind her, then peeled off into their sections because adults had trained them to file in with order when someone with a microphone was waiting. Jamal passed by, chin up, eyes locked on the floor like he was holding in a story he didn't want to leak. Nia walked with 2 friends, fingers pressed between the pages of a paperback, the way a reader stakes a claim on a moment for later. When she saw Amara, her mouth tightened into something that wasn't quite a smile and wasn't quite fear. It was resolve dressed like a teenager. The gym filled in layers. Freshmen first, noisy and uncertain. Then the upperclassmen, quieter, but only because they had learned where sound helps and where it gets used against you. Teachers sat in clusters, some near the doors, some near the stage. Everyone acting like an ordinary morning could carry this much weight without double-checking its knees. The bleachers groaned under the math of 1,000 people and 1,000 moods. Near the back, Maya claimed a seat like a lighthouse claims a coast. She gave Amara a look that said more than words. I am here. No teatrix. No hand-wringing. Presence. On the stage, Principal Harris stood to the side with 2 board members, and the chair of something he would mention during introductions. He wore a charcoal suit and a tie that tried to look like confidence. He checked his watch, checked the mic, checked the rows, then adjusted the stack of certificates that would get handed out in 3-second handshakes designed to look like investment. He glanced across the gym the way people do when they already know where the problem sits. Amara did not move. The lights dimmed a notch. The assistant principal tapped the mic and fed the crowd the usual reminders. Phones away, respect the speakers, applause when prompted. The national anthem played through tinny speakers and told itself it had done something. The drum line snapped a 5-second run to wake up the back row. Then the podium waited for Harris. He walked to it like stages remembered his shoes. He thanked people whose names mattered to budgets, praised departments that had moved a number from one place to another, told a story about a student who had overcome obstacles that made adults feel proud of their own applause. He laid out the word excellence with the care of a brand manager. He said growth again. He said trajectory. He did not say integrity. He did not say audit. He did not say that some numbers had been asked to lie. Amara listened, not to be persuaded, but to measure the room. Parents nodded like they had seen this show before. Students fidgeted like their bodies needed something true to hold. Teachers clapped at the right times. It was a well-rehearsed image. It always is until it isn't. When Harris called the first round of recognitions, the gym performed its choreography. Names, applause, photos. A mother smiled hard enough to forget a bill for 5 seconds. A shy boy shook with his whole arm and tried not to trip on the steps. A girl hugged her certificate and scanned the bleachers until her eyes found the person who had told her she could. It was real joy. Nobody should steal that. The data slide came next. A bar chart climbed in the air like ambition. The crowd murmured with that low approval sound people make when they do not know the difference between a picture and the truth. Harris let the slide sit long enough to sink in. He did not mention how the axes were scaled. He did not mention what had been massaged to get those bars up where he needed them to be. Amara's phone buzzed once inside her tote. She didn't check it. The stage had turned itself into a test for everyone in the room who knew the difference between optics and honesty. She breathed even and slow, felt the weight of the binder against her hip, and let her pulse line up with the drumline's earlier beat.
This room deserves the truth, and I am capable of carrying it. If I speak, some people will try to make me small. If I don't, some students will be treated small for the rest of the year. I can live with losing comfort. I cannot live with teaching silence when my job is to teach courage.
From the third row, Jamal's head turned a few degrees, like a compass moving toward home. Nia's fingers closed her paperback and held it to her chest as if a story could shield a heart for one more minute. On the aisle, Mr. Lewis set his coffee on the floor and rubbed his knee like old teachers do when they feel a storm in the bones. Maya didn't move. She became still on purpose, the way people do when a bird is about to land. Harris kept going. He spoke about partnerships. He thanked the testing vendor with a sentence that pretended to be a footnote. He threw a smile at the board members that would photograph well. He wrapped the slide deck with a sentence about community pride that gave the audience something easy to clap for. The room did what rooms do. It clapped. The microphone rested. The space after applause is the most honest part of any event. It is the breath where a room Her thoughts were steady now. 2 paths. She would speak clearly so no one could twist her words. She would stay calm so no one could call her angry. She would speak for the parents who came for their children, not for the ones who came for attention. The truth would show what kind of room this really was. Amara looked around, first at the students, then the parents, then the teachers. She didn't stare too long at anyone. This wasn't about sides. It was about honesty. In this school, she said, voice calm and clear, we tell our students that effort matters. We tell them the process is fair. We tell them their grades reflect their work. The gym went quiet. Everyone listened. When the final results don't match what we've seen all semester, she said, we owe our students clarity, and we owe our community the truth. Principal Harris lifted the mic. Ms. Johnson. Amara didn't look at him. She didn't shout. She finished her thought. I have already shared my concerns through the proper channels, she said. Amara didn't look at them. She faced forward, steady as stone. Harris tried again. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We appreciate your dedication. he said smoothly. But this is not the right. He didn't finish. The room had already decided what it was. Amara gave one last line, simple and clean. Our children deserve accuracy. They deserve a school that fixes what's wrong as quickly as it celebrates what's right. Then she stepped back, binder in hand, calm and sure. The week moved like a storm pretending to be calm. Every morning, the bell rang sharp, lockers slammed, and laughter filled the halls as if nothing had changed. But under that noise, everything felt different. Amara felt the shift in every glance. Whispers followed her like shadows. Some teachers looked away too fast, others looked too long, unsure if she was brave or reckless. She knew the truth. People fear those who refuse to fear them back. She kept her head high. Dignity, she had learned, is sometimes the loudest form of protest. Her classroom stayed her safe place, a world where her students were more than numbers or rankings. Inside those walls, they were thinkers, dreamers, fighters, exactly who they were meant to be. That afternoon, when the final bell rang, she stayed behind to prepare a lesson on James Baldwin's A Talk to Teachers. She chose it for a reason. No one understood teaching through injustice better than Baldwin. She wrote a line on the board. The purpose of education is to create in a person the ability to look at the world for himself. Then she paused and softly added, for herself. She smiled. Strong. Necessary. The door opened without a knock. She turned. Not a student this time, but Principal Harris. His tie sat too perfect. Like everything in his life had to look right even when it wasn't. Miss Johnson, he said, shutting the door behind him. We need to talk. Amara put down the marker slowly. Harris walked forward with that practiced confidence of a man who believed every room belonged to him. I've been informed, he began, that you're still discussing the exam results with students, that you're encouraging them to doubt the system. Amara folded her arms calmly. I'm encouraging them to trust themselves, she said. There's a difference. Harris stepped closer, his tone low. Your job is to maintain order, to uphold the school's integrity. There it was again. Integrity. A word he loved to say, but never seemed to live. Amara held his stare. She was done with polite threats disguised as leadership.
Integrity doesn't come from pretending everything is fine. It comes from facing what's broken and choosing to fix it. If telling the truth disrupts order, maybe the order needs to be disrupted. Students deserve honesty, not a performance.
Harris's jaw clenched. I'm warning you, he said. Drop this. You're walking into a fire you don't understand. Amara's voice stayed even. I understand enough. He laughed once, dry and forced. You think these parents will stand with you? When things get hard, they protect their own, not you. She didn't blink. That's exactly what I'm doing. Protecting my own students. He froze, caught without a reply. Then his voice sharpened. If you keep this up, Ms. Johnson, you might not have a classroom to come back to. He turned, slammed the door harder than he meant to, and left. The echo stayed behind longer than he did. Amara stood still, heart steady, not because she wasn't scared, but because she finally knew which direction her courage was facing. She looked back at Baldwin's words on the board and drew a single line beneath them. The purpose of education isn't compliance. It's awakening. The next morning carried a strange tension. As Amara entered the building, she saw a small crowd gathered near the office. Nia stood at the center, a paper pressed to her chest, face pale and shaken. Amara approached slowly. Nia, what's wrong? The students stepped aside. Nia looked up, eyes wet but strong.
They told me I failed everything. All my classes. Said I won't graduate this year. I don't understand how one mistake can erase years of work. Ms. Johnson, what do I do now?
The hallway tilted around them. That single paper weighed like a lifetime. Amara placed her hand gently on Nia's shoulder. Her voice was steady, filled with the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout.
You hold your head up high. You breathe. You remember who you are. And you let me handle the rest. Nobody gets to rewrite your worth because it's too big for their expectations.
Nia inhaled shakily, nodded, and Amara pulled her into a hug. Firm, protective, real. When Amara stood again, she noticed other students watching her. Not as their teacher, but as someone who might actually fight for them. She realized this wasn't about grades anymore. This was about dignity. About the promise adults make when they say, "Work hard and the world will see you." And how easily that promise can break. That afternoon, she sat at her desk again, surrounded by exam papers and spreadsheets. The pattern glared back at her. Wealthy last names at the top, hardworking students buried at the bottom. She made two piles. One labeled truth. One labeled their version. The taller pile said everything. Then she opened her laptop, not to enter grades, but to gather proof. Emails, timestamps, assignments, records. Every digital trail they thought she wouldn't notice. She wasn't complaining anymore. That night, she went home, dropped her keys by the door, and sat straight down with her laptop. Her eyes burned, but her focus was sharp. After an hour, her phone buzzed. Another message. Unknown number. Stop digging before you get buried. She stared at the screen for a long second, then turned the phone face down. Fear wanted attention. She wasn't giving it any. She opened her journal and began to write.
They want me to forget these students. They want me to unsee what I saw. They want me to choose silence because silence makes their lies look true. But I didn't become a teacher to protect adults from consequences. I became a teacher to protect children from being erased.
She underlined the last sentence twice, then closed the journal with a quiet promise. Tomorrow wouldn't be another day of patience. Tomorrow would be confrontation. If the system demanded she bow her head, she'd rather break the system than break her students. The rain started early, tapping softly against the window like it wanted to be let in. Amara sat at her small kitchen table, laptop open, binder to the side, coffee untouched. She wasn't thinking about speeches or confrontation. She was thinking about details, about times, clicks, and who held control over both. She logged into the grading system, moving through its tabs like muscle memory. Assignments, averages, logs, access. It had always been routine. Today, it was evidence. Something small caught her eye first. The finalization, time for the literature exam read 11:58 p.m. Long after teachers were locked out at 6. Who had access that late, and why? She opened the audit trail and filtered by override. The list loaded. 27 entries, some with strange usernames, one linked to a service account that shouldn't have edit rights at all. The notes were filled with sleepy words like alignment and threshold recalibration. Code for manipulation. She took screenshots, saved copies, and found Nia's score, adjusted downward, not by mistake, but by intent. Her hands went still. This wasn't anger. It was clarity. At school, the air smelled of wet paper and dust. Amara picked up her mail, expecting nothing, but found a beige envelope, unmarked, half open. The secretary glanced her way, then looked away, like a silent ally. Amara took it to her classroom, locked the door and opened it. Inside were 3 pages. Keycard access logs, copier records, and a sticky note that said check 11:42 p.m. The logs showed one person active in the records room that night, S. Pennington, the testing coordinator's assistant. A copier job had run at 11:47 p.m. She set the pages side by side with the grading export log she'd printed earlier. 11:47 p.m. on the copier. 11:58 p.m. on the exports. The pattern sat there looking obvious and unbothered. She took photos with her phone, front and back, then tucked the originals into a clear sleeve and slid them into the binder. She added a title, Access Plus Output, Late Night Window. Her classroom door opened without a knock. Not Harris. Not a student. It was Ms. Delgado from the front desk, the kind of woman who ran a building in all the ways a title never sees. She stood in the doorway holding a stack of forms she didn't need to deliver personally. Delgado didn't step inside. She kept her voice low and her face plain. "We're all just trying to do our jobs, Ms. Johnson," she said. "Some of us have to do them quietly." She set the forms on the corner of the nearest desk and left before gratitude could make things unsafe. The door clicked shut. The message stayed. Amara sat with the silence long enough to respect it. Quiet people are often the bravest because they choose their moments carefully. She pulled up the shared drive for the assessment office. Most folders were permission locked, but one had been left open, probably by someone who didn't know the difference between edit and view. The folder name was Harmless, Spring Run-Up. Inside sat a handful of spreadsheets with names that disguised their purpose. Rank_map, thresholds_alt, SNR_clean, board_talkings. She opened rank_map first and felt the floor tilt. The sheet didn't list student names. It used codes. But any teacher who had lived with a roster long enough can read a code the way a mother reads a child's face. The ranking included columns for legacy, board, and donor, each weighted differently depending on the scenario selected from a drop-down labeled narrative. Someone had rehearsed how the story needed to look. Someone had engineered which faces would walk across a stage smiling for a picture that would make the adults feel successful. She scrolled to the bottom and saw a second tab, Fails Shield. The formula cross-referenced attendance flags and late submission counts, the kind of data that underestimates students who carry real lives after last bell. The comments field contained a sentence that landed like a slap. Ensure plausible distribution to avoid audit triggers. Her chest tightened. Not with shock, with confirmation. She printed 3 pages and stopped. She wasn't going to empty the whole folder into her tote. She chose carefully. 1 page that showed the narrative drop-down and its effect on rankings, 1 page that showed the fails shield logic, and the first page of the board_talkings doc that read like a script about excellence trends and strategic priorities with no mention of teaching. She labeled the new sleeve, Scenario Waiting Plus Messaging. She slid it into the binder beside the access logs. The day moved around her. Students came and went, joked and tried and sometimes pretended not to care. She ran the Baldwin discussion clean, no theatrics, asked what education owed a child and what a child owed themselves. A boy in the back said it straight. We owe ourselves not to lie about what we see. She wrote that on the board under the quote and left it there even after the bell. After school, she walked the binder to her car like it was a living thing. The rain had flattened to a smear. In the lot, cars backed out in uneven rows as staff tried to escape before traffic turned mean. At her windshield, a small square waited under the wiper. She stiffened, then saw the handwriting and exhaled. The same block letters as the sticky note. No envelope this time. Just a folded printout protected in a plastic sleeve. She slid into the driver's seat, locked the doors out of habit, and opened it. Email header, slide deck final. From s.pennington@evelyn.k12 to p.harris@evelyn.k12, board office, vendor_rep. Time 6:22 a.m. today. Attachment. assembly_results_board_v5.pptx. Body. All visuals match narrative C. Leaderboard cleansed. Negative outliers masked. Speaking points in notes field. Masked. The word sat there like it had borrowed the wrong job. She stared at the header long enough to memorize the timestamp, then photographed the page and placed it with the others. She didn't need the attachment. The sentence did enough. On the drive home, she passed the grocery store with the lopsided sign, and the bus stop where 2 middle schoolers practiced a TikTok dance without caring who watched. The ordinary world insisted on being ordinary, which was a gift. She didn't speed. She didn't blast the radio. She let the day stack itself quietly into what it had become. Proof. In her apartment, she set the binder on the table, washed her hands like she was scrubbing off the building, and stood at the window while the city made its evening noises. She thought of Nia's pale face, of Jamal's chin lift, of Delgado's careful delivery, of whoever had copied the logs and left them where she would find them. She thought of how a system can be rotten and still full of good people trying to figure out how to be useful without losing their paychecks. She opened her journal to a fresh page. No quotes. No long reflection. 5 lines that she would not forget. The truth is documented. The pattern is deliberate. They will call it a misunderstanding. They will call me emotional. I will call it what it is. She closed the book and took a breath that steadied every muscle she would need tomorrow. Then she composed an email to the district assessment coordinator with the subject line, Supplemental Evidence, Access plus Scenario Waiting. She kept the body short and professional, attached the PDFs, and copied the department chair. She hit send and felt that small release a person gets when responsibility is honored. Her phone buzzed a minute later. Not a threat this time. A message from an unknown number that wasn't trying to be brave. "Hey, you don't know me. I can't be seen. But you're not wrong. B. Check your mailbox before school. 2 minutes early. Alone." She stared at the screen, wondering whether to trust it. Then she remembered the envelope, the logs, the slide email. Somebody inside was finished pretending. She slept light and woke before the alarm. The hallway was dim, the building quiet. She reached the mailbox 2 minutes before she usually would, and found another beige envelope with nothing written on it. She tucked it into her tote, and didn't open it until she was behind her classroom door with the blinds tilted again. Inside, a single USB drive taped to a paper labeled only Vendor Portal, Activity. No note. No signature. Just a key to a door she hadn't known existed. She didn't plug unknown drives into school hardware. She wasn't careless. She went to her laptop, opened a clean virtual session, disconnected from the school Wi-Fi, and used a small offline reader app she had downloaded years ago to view whatever was on the stick. Folder names appeared. A-ports and Stargate and Archive. The kind of file tree a vendor uses when the client doesn't ask too many questions. Inside Stargate sat a set of pre-release score files with timestamps that matched the night she'd seen in the audit trail. The metadata on those files told the story nobody wanted told. The last editor wasn't an Evelyn account at all. It was a vendor admin with a generic ID and an IP range that didn't belong to the district. 2 of the stage files contained comments in a hidden field. Per client request narrative C. Adjust composite floor for cohort B. Mask outlier flags for board-connected accounts. She swallowed hard. Not fear. The kind of breath you take when a case goes from I think to I know. She printed screenshots. She saved a copy to her own external drive. She returned the USB to the envelope and sealed it. She added a new sleeve to the binder. Vendor edits plus client narrative proof. The binder now carried the kind of weight that makes people careful with their hands. The bell rang. Students filled the halls, their voices sloshing around the corners, their laughter reminding the building why it existed in the first place. Amara taught first period like it was the only thing that mattered, because for the students in front of her, it was. She didn't hint at anything. She didn't recruit soldiers. She just taught them to read a paragraph until the truth stopped hiding. Between periods, she sent one more email to the assessment coordinator with the subject, Additional Evidence, Vendor Stage Edits. She wrote one clean paragraph, attached the files, and offered to bring the binder to any meeting requested. She hit send and felt ready for whatever came next. At noon, while students moved toward the cafeteria in a river of noise and sneakers, a low chime sounded through the PA. The assistant principal's voice shook in that careful way administrators get when they are trying to fake calm. "Staff, please check your email for an important message from the superintendent's office regarding tomorrow's assembly." Amara opened her inbox. A new email sat at the top, Urgent flag on. Eyes already on it. From Superintendent at District. To all faculty, Everland High Institute. Subject: Assembly, External Oversight Presence. Body: Due to concerns raised at the district level, tomorrow's assembly will proceed with external oversight present. Please prepare to accommodate a brief statement from the assessment office prior to the presentation of results. External oversight. The phrase read like rain finally hitting dry ground. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply closed the laptop and rested her palm on the binder, as if it were a heartbeat she could steady. The day slid forward. Last bell. Hallway echo. Backpacks clapped against backs like applause for survival. Amara packed her tote and locked her door, then walked the quiet hallway toward the exit. Halfway to the stairwell, the lights flickered once, then twice, then steadied. She paused and listened. A door eased open somewhere out of sight. Not a loud push. A careful one. She turned and saw a figure at the end of the corridor, too far to make out clearly, holding the beige of another envelope. The person raised it once like a salute, then set it gently on the floor, and stepped back into the dim. Amara waited until the hallway was empty, then walked down and picked it up. The envelope was thin. Inside, a single printed line, centered on the page. If the mic cuts, go to the bleacher aisle. We'll turn theirs back on. She folded the page and slipped it into the binder's front pocket. Someone on the inside had moved from caution to commitment. This wasn't just her fight anymore. It was a quiet network of people who had decided they were done. Outside, the rain had returned, steadier now, the kind that soaks you before you realize you're wet. She lifted her tote close to her body and hurried to the car, the lot glistening like film. She sat behind the wheel, shook water from her curls, and looked at the building through the windshield. Tomorrow the school would try to tell a story. She was going to make sure it told the truth. Her phone buzzed once more. A calendar alert she hadn't set flashed onto the screen. Assembly tech check 7:30 a.m., South Gym entrance. Bring binder. No sender. No invite history. Just the appointment, sitting there like a door half open. She stared at it, measuring risk against purpose. Then she hit accept and slid the phone face down beside the binder. The rain drummed harder on the roof. Somewhere inside the building, a light went dark and came back again. The city went on indifferent as cities do, while one woman's decision gathered itself for morning. Tomorrow, at Evelyn High Institute, the microphones would work or they wouldn't. Either way, the truth had found enough hands to carry it. And someone on the inside was ready to flip a switch. Morning came earlier than Amara wanted, but her mind was already set. She stood at the mirror, smoothed her blazer, adjusted her curls so they framed her face with quiet confidence. She looked like a woman ready to teach a lesson the world didn't want to grade. By the door, the binder waited, truths packed tight. When she lifted it, the weight settled into her arm like a silent ally. She stepped out, locked the door, and let the cool air remind her that courage often arrives before sunrise. Evelyn High looked ordinary. The kind of ordinary buildings were before something unforgettable. At the South Gym entrance, a folding chair propped the door. Inside, Sienna from AV worked the cables with the urgency of someone who knows where a system breaks. Sienna clocked the binder, then looked away. "Quick mic check," she said, trying to sound casual. A whisper followed. "If they cut you, there's a backup. Focus on what you came to say." Amara stepped to the podium, lifted the main mic. "For years, I trusted this system." The sound died mid-sentence. Silence hit like a warning. Sienna wasn't surprised. She flipped switches, breath tight. "They set a kill switch," she muttered. She pointed toward the bleachers. "Bakup meek. If this happens later, move fast. Don't hesitate." No more words were needed. Resistance had chosen its form. Students poured in, backpacks, whispers, nervous curiosity. Parents lined the sides with coffees and practiced concern. Teachers clustered like teams before a game they weren't sure they wanted. Principal Harris paced the stage with a polished smile that didn't fit anymore. In the wings, Amara stood straight, the binder pressed to her ribs. Nerves knocked, purpose opened the door. Harris took the mic and delivered the usual. Rising test scores. Excellence. Rankings. Evelyn as a beacon. Achievements displayed like trophies earned fairly. The words kept adults satisfied while students learned what it felt like to be statistics instead of human. Then the segue, phrased like generosity, built like a trap. Ms. Johnson will share a few words about our success stories. He held out a printed script, the narrative he expected. She didn't touch it. She walked to the podium carrying her binder, not his lines. "Thank you," she said, warm and steady. "I want to talk about success." The mic cut again. Lights dipped. Air changed. Harris blinked, smiled too quick. Amara didn't pause. She turned from the podium and crossed to the bleachers, to the backup Sienna had staged. Her heels on the floor sounded like refusal. She lifted the second mic. Her voice filled the gym.
Success is not a scoreboard or a bar graph that someone gets to adjust whenever honesty becomes inconvenient. Success is the student who walks miles to school, but still shows up ready to learn. Success is the girl who writes essays between babysitting shifts because she believes education can build a door where no one else sees one. Success is the boy who studies during his 15-minute break at work because he refuses to let exhaustion make his decisions. These students show up every day fighting battles that would break grown adults, and they deserve a system that rewards their effort instead of rearranging their future for politics.
Murmurs spread. Harris moved toward the sound booth, control slipping. Amara opened the binder and raised her first sheet. The projector blinked, then displayed late-night access logs to the entire gym. The floor, it turned out, was thinner than people thought. Parents sat up, eyes narrowed. Students looked at one another, relief finally. Harris tried to shout into his dead mic. Only his frustration showed.
Some of our most hardworking students were marked as failures, not because they failed, but because a handful of powerful adults decided they didn't fit the school's marketing plan. Altering grades to protect reputations while damaging children's futures is not a mistake. It's manipulation with consequences. These students are not background characters in a story written by administrators who only care how good the school looks in a brochure. They are the story. They are the reason this school exists at all.
Students clapped first, loud sure. Parents followed, some standing, some pointing at the stage where Harris had no mic and no defense. The room had shifted. This wasn't the school's assembly anymore. It was an awakening. Amara stepped forward and lowered her voice, just enough to draw the entire gym closer.
Became a teacher to lift students up, not to watch them be pushed down and told they deserved it. I will not stay quiet while their potential is twisted to protect the comfort of adults who forgot what education stands for. I will not apologize for telling the truth, and I will not stop fighting until every student is treated with respect. Silence is over, and this promise will stand.
The gym erupted. Not chaos, conviction. Harris froze, realizing he wasn't the strongest voice in the room. Students weren't just listening anymore. They were believing. And belief, real collective belief, is how rebellion against injustice begins. For a moment, the gym seemed to hold its breath. The final line of Amara's speech still echoed off the high ceiling like a bell that had finally been allowed to ring. Students stared with wide eyes, some proud and some stunned, and parents leaned forward as if waiting for the next shoe to drop. Truth had turned the air electric. And when truth is loud, silence betrays those who created it. Principal Harris rushed forward, fury tightening his shoulders. For a man who had always prided himself on presentation, he suddenly looked like he didn't know where to put his hands. His mic was still dead, and the way he tapped it showed he didn't expect a system he controlled to fail him. There was something almost poetic about a man who relied on silence, discovering he had lost the power to mute dissent. He signaled urgently toward the stage crew, but Sienna pretended not to see him. Her eyes remained locked on the soundboard like she was guiding a ship through a storm. The assistant principal stepped forward then, as if he could restore order just by looking official. But the students weren't interested in the old script anymore. They had been recast. They were speaking roles now. Parents started standing, not angry at the rebellion, but angry they had not heard this sooner. 2 by 2 and row by row, they gained the confidence to demand what adults always promise children: fairness. A mother near the middle of the gym shouted something about her son's grades never making sense. A father closer to the front demanded answers for why hardworking students were being robbed of their opportunities. The noise swelled not with chaos but with awakening, voices that no longer needed permission to exist. Amara remained exactly where she was, one hand on the binder, and the other holding the microphone, her posture unshaken. She didn't need to shout anymore. The truth was speaking louder than fear. She looked like a woman who had finally arrived at the place life had been trying to push her toward since the first moment she stepped into a classroom. District officials stood near the back wall with clipboards and nervous expressions. They had listened quietly during Harris's polished speech, but now their pens moved fast. When one of them pointed to the giant screen showing unauthorized edits and late-night overrides, the others gathered closer. Harris hurried toward them, talking fast and gesturing too much. He looked like a man trying to put out a fire using excuses as water. His face flushed red when he realized no one was listening to him. Authority that depended on silence crumbled the moment silence refused to cooperate. Amara watched him in a way that wasn't triumphant but painfully honest. She never wanted a showdown. She wanted a classroom built on fairness and children who believed they mattered. But if the world forced her into a battle, she would swing with the truth and not apologize for the swing. She took a breath, steady and deep, and the microphone carried her voice again with quiet power.
I want to say this clearly. Education loses its soul the moment adults care more about how success looks than how it feels to the children earning it. Our students shouldn't have to beg a system to recognize what they've already proven. I know there will be consequences for standing here today, but the cost of staying silent would have been worse. No child should ever believe their effort is worthless just because someone with power found comfort more important than truth. And if telling that truth means I lose my job, then so be it. Because what I refuse to lose is my integrity.
The gym fell quiet again. The kind of quiet that comes from respect, not obedience. People wanted to hear every word. They wanted to feel like someone finally stood up for what they always hoped the world would be. A hand went up in the risers. It was Nia, nervous but determined. Harris tried to wave her down, but his authority no longer reached that far. Nia stood tall, and her voice didn't shake when she spoke.
I worked for my future every night, every weekend, every time I chose school, over what the world said I was supposed to be. When that report said fail, it nearly broke something in me that took years to build. But watching Ms. Johnson stand here, telling the truth out loud, reminded me that one wrong grade doesn't define who I am. What defines me is the courage to fight for what's right. If my life is a story, then I want truth to be its first chapter, not fear.
Applause broke loose and rolled through the gym like a wave hitting shore. It was loud and messy and real. It was what justice sounds like when it finally gets a microphone. Harris slammed his hand on the podium in frustration, and the sound rang out like one final attempt to hold on to a power that had already slipped from his grip. Another district official stepped up and whispered something in his ear, and whatever it was made his shoulders drop like he had been relieved of a role he thought he owned. Amara didn't celebrate. She simply watched, feeling the weight of every student's future settle into her ribs. This moment wasn't victory. It was exposure. The real work, the hardest work, comes after truth steps into the light and demands to be reckoned with. As the superintendent approached the stage, the air shifted again. Phones were recording. Local reporters who had come expecting a feel-good story now realized they stumbled into a revolution unfolding under a school's fluorescent lights. Amara tightened her grip on the binder. She had done what she promised. She had spoken. The room had listened. And now something irreversible had begun. The superintendent adjusted the microphone at the podium, the main microphone, suddenly alive again, and the eyes of an entire community waited to hear the system's response. Amara didn't know if she was about to be thanked or fired, but she stood tall anyway, because courage isn't about knowing you're safe. It's about doing it even when you're not. The superintendent, Dr. Renee Caldwell, moved like a woman who had seen enough school board performances to know when the curtain needed to drop. The gym lights reflected off her glasses as she stepped to the microphone, and the chatter fell into a hush that felt like a collective inhale. She didn't look rattled. She looked calculating, like someone piecing together a problem she already sensed the answer to. "Thank you, Ms. Johnson," she said, giving Amara a nod that carried respect no matter how tightly the principal's jaw clenched beside her. "I believe our students and families deserve clarity. We will review everything presented here today." Harris took an aggressive half-step toward the mic, but Dr. Caldwell blocked him with one hand, still smiling for the audience. Power had shifted. Everyone felt it. And the students were not done. Jamal stood suddenly, his chair scraping the floor as his voice broke through the air. "Ms. Johnson told the truth. We all know it. We see what goes on. No speech. No monologue. Just raw, teenage honesty." Other students chimed in. "She's the only one who believes in us. They can't silence her. We deserve better." Harris slammed another stack of papers against the podium as if force could rewrite facts. His voice was tight and sharp. "This is not appropriate. This school is being disrespected." Everyone could see it. The man didn't understand the difference between being challenged and being exposed. Dr. Caldwell narrowed her eyes. "Principal Harris, enough." The word rolled through the room like justice finally remembering its job. Amara didn't smile. She wasn't here to win. She was here to stop the losing. The quiet losing students had been suffering under for years. A reporter raised her camera toward Amara, capturing the moment that would travel far beyond this gym. Phones hovered in every row. This story wasn't going to be buried in a principal's office again. Amara breathed in, steadying her pulse. She knew she wasn't safe yet. Speaking truth meant stepping into a storm she couldn't control anymore. Then she looked at her students, their eyes shining with hope she refused to crush.
I'm not standing here because I wanted to be brave. I'm standing here because silence started to feel like betrayal. And I will never betray the children who trusted me with their future. Systems don't collapse in one day. They crack one lie at a time. Today, that ceiling finally cracked. I never asked to stand alone. But if that's what it takes to protect what my students earned, I'll do it again without blinking. Because in my classroom, truth isn't optional.
The gym erupted in applause, loud, raw, real. Dr. Caldwell raised her mic. "We are placing Principal Harris on immediate administrative leave, pending investigation." Gasps filled the room. Harris froze, his pride shrinking as security guided him off stage. Power built on silence had nowhere left to stand. Amara didn't move right away. She had expected punishment, not justice this fast. Dr. Caldwell turned to her. "Ms. Johnson, go home for the day. We'll talk soon." Amara nodded, binder in hand. Leaving the stage wasn't retreat. It was crossing into a new life. Students reached out, whispering thank you. Parents stepped aside. Maya stood near the bleachers, chin lifted, eyes proud. Amara didn't cry. She just walked, calm and steady. The kind of walk that tells fear it no longer has power where truth stands tall. The gym cleared out the way storms leave a town. Loud at first, then quiet enough for people to actually hear themselves breathe. Amara walked the hallway slow, binder pressed to her ribs. Students passed in small groups, whispering gratitude in half sentences. A freshman gave her a quick nod that said thank you without words. Outside, sunlight hit the wet pavement like the world was trying to apologize. Reporters waited by the curb. "Ms. Johnson, do you feel vindicated? Are you worried about retaliation?" She didn't stop, didn't pose. I stand by what I said, she replied, calm and done performing. In the car, lavender still clung to the air. For a moment she just sat there, fingers loose on the wheel, letting adrenaline drain out of her body. She already knew what was coming. Meetings, emails, people suddenly unsure how close they could stand next to the woman who cracked the system. Every revolution sends a bill eventually. At home, her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from friends, parents, even strangers. Some kind, some cautious, a few cruel. Then one text stopped her cold. Nia, I feel seen. That one hit deep, like all the noise just stepped aside. When Maya showed up with her cane, and that look that could still check Amara like she was 16, they didn't hug. They just poured tea and sat by the window. After a quiet minute, Maya said, "You did what you were meant to do." Amara let out a breath that sounded halfway between a laugh and a prayer. Later, she opened her journal. Fear rode shotgun today, but purpose drove. I didn't win anything. I just refused to lose who I am. Then the phone rang, district office. Polite voice. Legal tone. Ms. Johnson, we'd like to meet tomorrow with the oversight team. Of course, she said. Not trust. Just control. She'd bring the binder, the calm, and the truth, the only tools she ever really needed. Next afternoon, she walked into a glass-bright conference room smelling like coffee and paperwork. Dr. Caldwell nodded from across the table. Same steady energy from the gym, but stripped of politics now. They asked questions carefully, like each word had a lawyer's shadow. Amara answered clean. Facts only, no drama, no guesses. When someone asked how she got the data, she said, "People inside wanted the truth to live." The room went still. One investigator looked up, pen frozen mid-note. Respect flickered before he could hide it. When it ended, they thanked her. Not fake, polite, real. Dr. Caldwell said, "We'll be in touch within 48 hours." Amara nodded. She didn't need promises. Just results. Outside, the air felt new. Her phone buzzed. Email, community center. Auditorium available for student voice night. No cost. She smiled. A new kind of stage was waiting. By dusk, the community center glowed like hope on a corner. A handwritten sign on the glass read, "The listening tonight." Inside, folding chairs lined up beneath a single warm spotlight. Students, parents, neighbors, some nervous, some fired up, filled the rows. Even a few district officials slid into the back, arms crossed, trying to act invisible. Amara stepped to the mic. "This isn't protest," she said. "It's honesty." Then she opened the floor. A shy sophomore spoke first. "Ms. Johnson, you saw me when I tried to stay invisible." Applause, soft but steady. Jamal came next.
I just want a fair shot. If I fail, let it be because I didn't work, not because someone decided my life for me. The room hummed with agreement.
Then Nia walked up, paper in hand, voice trembling but brave.
My mama works 3 jobs to keep the lights on. When someone changes my grades, they're not just lying about me. They're saying her sacrifice doesn't matter. Silence. The kind that makes hearts lean in.
From the back, Malik spoke up without moving to the mic. They don't just fix grades for the rich kids. They knock down the ones they don't like. Happened to me last year. Gasps. Parents clutching hands. Truth widened. Amara stepped center stage. Voice steady, binder resting on the podium.
Tell my students truth is a muscle. It only gets strong if you use it. We didn't fix everything tonight, but we cracked open a door that's been locked too long. Fear is real, sure. So is community. When we stand with our kids, the system has to listen. This isn't my movement, it's ours. And silence doesn't get to win again.
The applause rose slow, not wild, but deep. People were thinking, choosing courage. Even the officials in the back stopped writing for a second. A mother came forward, hands shaking. "If our students can speak," she said, "then we can too." The whole room shifted. Fear turned into readiness. Maya dabbed her eyes, pride shining steady. When it was over, nobody rushed out. Conversations bloomed in corners, plans, ideas, something new taking root. Amara packed her binder, feeling the weight different now. Less burden, more beginning. Truth hadn't won yet, but it finally had a microphone. And nobody was cutting the power this time. Back home, she watered the plants, answered nothing, and placed the binder on the shelf like a promise kept. Her phone buzzed one last time. An unknown number again. More will come. She smiled, locked the door, and let herself rest. Not the restless kind, the real kind. The kind you earn after telling the truth and surviving it. Sleep came quiet. And for once, peace didn't need to announce itself. The email arrived just after noon. A short line in a crowded inbox that carried more weight than anything else on the screen. The subject said preliminary findings, and the body was efficient to the point of coldness. A meeting at the district office, attendance required, materials reviewed, next steps to be presented. Amara read it twice, not because she didn't understand, but because understanding and absorbing are two different kinds of knowing. She closed the laptop and stood at the window for a long minute, watching a delivery driver parallel park like it was a meditation practice. All morning she had been folding laundry, wiping counters, and watering plants as if clean surfaces could steady the rest of her life. The meeting would not be a clean surface. It would be a table where the system tried to prove it still owned the room. The district building had that deliberate, quiet public offices cultivate, the kind where printers hum behind glass and shoes make polite sounds on commercial carpet. Dr. Caldwell met her at the elevator, her expression professional but not cold. A balance that told Amara she was trying to be two people at once. A leader who must protect the institution, and a woman who had just watched the institution get confronted by truth. They walked down a hallway lined with framed photographs of smiling students and trophy cases that told a story of excellence that now needed footnotes. In the conference room, 3 investigators waited with laptops open and legal pads stacked in a small, intimidating tower. A 4th chair sat at the end of the table with a single folder in front of it. The chair belonged to Principal Harris. It was empty. The first investigator began with the practiced cadence of someone who has had to tell unhappy truths to rooms full of important faces. The team had reviewed access logs, grading histories, version histories, vendor metadata, and cross-referenced unusual score changes with internal emails requesting narrative alignment for rankings and scholarships. They had interviewed staff across departments and filed preliminary statements from students who volunteered testimony. The conclusion, delivered without drama, sounded like a gavel landing on a soft pad. Grade alterations had occurred without proper documentation. Approvals had been faked by proxy logins, and patterns correlated with families who had social and financial leverage. They did not use the word corruption. They didn't have to. The details did that work for them. Harris entered halfway through, breathless as if he had run from a place where his power used to be. He slid into the chair and tried to interrupt with a half-smile that used to open doors. It did not open this one. The investigator continued, noting that retaliatory downgrades had also occurred after disciplinary reports and conflicts with athletics. The team had found at least 4 instances where a student's grades dipped in ways that did not match their classwork or test history, always after a staff dispute. Malik's story was not an outlier. It was a blueprint. When they paused, the whole room seemed to fold inward. For a few seconds the only sound was the air conditioner, steady as a metronome. Dr. Caldwell took a slow breath and asked Amara if she wanted to add anything. It was not a trap. It was an opening made of caution, and a tiny light. She said she did not come to ruin a man's career, or to gather applause. She came because students were being bent to fit an image that looked like success while their actual effort was treated as optional. She said the building could survive a scandal, but children don't always survive the message they receive when the adults decide truth is negotiable. She told them she understood the pressure to produce numbers that please donors and boards, but if the cost of those numbers is a child's belief in their own worth, then the price is too high. She said she was asking for nothing more dramatic than fairness, and nothing more radical than honesty. And if the district could not promise both, then the district needed to stop using words like excellence. Harris bristled. His voice finally found a lane and came out tight, rehearsed, and edged with offense. He claimed the changes were the result of clerical corrections, that teachers had misentered data, that families sometimes provided additional documentation after deadlines which required adjustments. He claimed the access logs reflected late-night updates from the vendor's support team. He claimed the narrative tag in the spreadsheet was a harmless label used by a junior staffer who misunderstood a column header. Each claim collapsed under the weight of the evidence stacked neatly beside it. The investigator pointed to session IDs that matched Harris's own credentials. Vendor timestamps undermined the story about external edits. The junior staffer had already provided a statement that she entered changes as directed. The room did not tilt. It simply clarified. Dr. Caldwell's voice came in low and steady. The district would place Harris on full administrative leave, pending final action by the board. An interim principal would be assigned within 48 hours. An external audit would continue through all departments with authority to recommend discipline and policy changes. All flagged grades would be reviewed and corrected with a written record sent to families. The district would implement a multi-signature requirement for any grade changes and adopt a vendor process that locked edits to an accountable chain. She did not look at Harris when she read the list. She looked at Amara. Afterward, when the investigators left to write their summaries and Harris paced in small, angry circles that made him look like a man who had finally met a wall, Dr. Caldwell asked Amara to walk with her. They stepped into a smaller room down the hall, more human-sized, with a window that looked out onto a courtyard full of underwatered hedges and a bench where someone's coffee had been forgotten. Dr. Caldwell closed the door carefully and told Amara there would be people who tried to turn her into a symbol they could use and others who would try to turn her into a villain they could dismiss. She asked if Amara wanted her classroom back while the audit continued. The question had more subtext than a paragraph. It carried pride, caution, and a test for how ready the district was to be watched by the woman who had just forced it to look in the mirror. Amara said yes. She wanted her room, her students, her board of quotes, her shelf of paperbacks with the bent spines that meant somebody loved them. She wanted to grade essays without wondering who would flip the numbers after she went home. She wanted the simplest shape of dignity. To work without having to watch her back every minute. The return was quiet. No balloons. No speeches. She walked down Evelyn's hallway the next morning with the binder tucked under her arm and a small, almost private smile that came from knowing she had outlasted the worst of the storm. Students looked up in that hush that spreads when someone important steps into a space. Then the room breathed again and life resumed. She began class with a paragraph from Baldwin on the board and a question. What do we owe each other when we know the truth? Students leaned forward. Pencils lifted like small flags. Monday came with the kind of clear sky that looks like optimism pretending to be weather. The auditorium at district headquarters filled with parents, students, and staff, each group carrying a different kind of hope. Reporters lined the back wall like a reminder that stories do not end just because institutions vote. The board chair called the meeting to order, and the ritual began. Agenda, minutes, policy items. Then the floor opened. Parents spoke with the cadence of people who have paid tuition and worry. Students spoke in voices that trembled only on the first sentence. A counselor from another school described how pressure to hit the number slowly changes the way people see children. A custodian stepped to the microphone and said, in 15 words, the most honest thing anyone spoke all night. Students don't need perfect adults. They need honest ones. When the board voted, the result felt both inevitable and hard-won. Termination for Harris, referral to the state licensing committee, procurement of an independent ombuds for the district, a transparent appeals process for students, and a ban on off-hours grade access without live dual authentication. The room did not cheer. It exhaled. Then it applauded in a way that felt like fixing a roof after a storm. Necessary, not glamorous, the kind of maintenance a community owes itself. After the meeting, Amara walked out into a night that was a degree cooler than it had been 2 hours earlier. She stood on the steps and let the air move across her face. The fight was not over. It had only found its next shape. But for the first time in a long time, she believed that shape could be lived with. Her phone buzzed with a single text from Nia. Paper got fixed. It's right now. Another from Malik. Coach apologized. Then after a pause, I'm back on the team. Amara closed her eyes and let the messages settle like warm stones in the pocket of a coat you love. A city bus sighed at the corner. A street vendor laughed at some joke too quiet to hear. The world did not stop to mark the moment. It kept going. That, too, was a kind of blessing. The weeks after the assembly weren't a victory lap. They were work. New policies rolled out, teachers retrained, and parents got real access to their kids' records. The system didn't become perfect, just honest enough to start over. Amara's classroom found a calmer rhythm. Students spoke louder, laughed easier, and wrote like their words mattered again. She taught writing circles that began with respect before critique, and watched confidence take root where fear used to live. At night, the listening became the city's heartbeat. Some evenings felt like open mic therapy, others like quiet prayer. Parents brought food, kids brought poems, and neighbors brought belief. Even district staff showed up to listen. That alone felt like progress. There were bumps, rumors online, pushback from teachers tired of extra steps, parents nervous about too much transparency. Amara stayed cool. If honesty makes the job hard, she said, maybe the job needs to change. She pulled the binder down one Saturday, thicker now with policies, audits, and thank you notes. Running a palm across its cover, she thought of her grandmother's porch, her first class, the day she almost settled for silence and didn't. When graduation came, she watched her students cross the stage with unshakable pride. Names pronounced right, applause fair and full. Nia smiled like someone finally recognized what she'd earned. Malik lifted his chin toward his mom in the bleachers. Justice looked ordinary, which made it beautiful. That night, Amara wrote in her journal, "Truth doesn't fix everything, but it fixes enough to keep going. Dignity isn't loud, but once you see it stand up, you don't forget. Community's a verb. Fear keeps you careful. Purpose keeps you moving." Weeks later, at a small listening night, a shy 9th grader asked if writing ever gets easier. Amara smiled. Writing? No. But being honest does. And honest writing lasts. Driving home, the city lights painted gold across her windshield. She parked, unlocked her door, and stood in the lavender-scented quiet that finally felt like peace. She wasn't the woman who took down a principal. She was a teacher who told the truth loud enough that the room had to rearrange itself. That's what she kept: her work, her voice, her students, and a community learning to stay honest on purpose. The rest could come and go. It always does. She turned off the lamp, exhaled, and slept, the kind of sleep you earn. Thank you for sharing this moment with us tonight. Stories like Amara's remind us that when a Black woman chooses truth, the world has to listen, even when it doesn't want to. If this story touched your heart, show love by liking this video, sharing it with someone who needs courage today, and subscribing to Black Women's Soul so you never miss a new journey. Before you go, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to know where my beautiful soul family is standing with us. Stay safe, stay strong, and never let anyone silence the voice that's already yours.